Hi, my name is Alicia Wolf, and I'm going to be talking to you about Fred Simmons Keller. Fred Simmons Keller was born on January 2nd, 1899 in Willow Grove, New York. And as a young boy, Keller's family moved around often, and he particularly didn't like school or the lecture style of school. And so he, during his high school years, worked as a Western Union telegraph operator, where he appeared to enjoy that work and would influence later research, as would 1918, where he enlisted in the United States Army and was in the last year of World War I serving. In his educational years, in 1926, he attended Harvard University as a psychology graduate student. He received instruction from well-known professors such as E.G. Boring and W.S. Hunter, and he was also the roommate of B.F. Skinner, who was also a fellow graduate student at that time. And later on, they would collaborate on several research studies and build off of each other's work. In his teaching and research career, after graduating from Harvard University, Keller began working at Colgate University, and then in 1938 he joined the staff at Columbia University, and there he would stay for 26 years, and he would retire there for the first time. While there, he collaborated with other research professionals in developing a laboratory and curriculum for students entering the behavior field. And the laboratory worked where students could each have their own rat to apply techniques in behavior analysis. And he collaborated with Volkman and Rees and then Schoenfeld to help develop this curriculum. After he retired from Columbia University, Keller taught in Brazil, educating individuals on the field. He also went to Arizona State University, the Institute for Behavioral Research in Maryland, Western Michigan, and then ended his career in Georgetown University, where he retired for the second time in 1976. So his areas of focus, he contributed over 80 research articles and wrote 7 books. His main areas were use of reinforcement for code reception when helping decrease errors in Morse code transcriptions. The reinforcement theory he used with rats, very similar to Skinner with pigeons. Keller just used rats to help confirm and build off research Skinner had already completed. He also developed the personalized system of instruction, or as known as the Keller Plan, which helped spark conversation on educational reform and new teaching methods for students to learn material. He received many awards and honors throughout his career, and most of them were given later in his career. In 1964, he carried the title of Emeritus of Psychology at Columbia University. He was the former president of Eastern Psychological Association. He was presented the Certificate of Merit by President Truman for his contribution of code reception on Morse code during the World War II. And in 1970, he received Distinguished Teacher Award from the American Psychological Foundation. In 1972, he received Honorary Doctor of Science degree for Long Island University. And in 1976, he was given the Behavioral Scientist Medal for the Institute for Behavioral Research. And in 1976, he received Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters degree. His research on code reception of Morse code was fascinating to read, and he used immediate reinforcement to help students better receive codes and transcribe them correctly. So what would happen in the studies is that there would be a presentation of the signal, and then students were given a 3-second window to write the appropriate digit or letter. After the 3 seconds elapsed, the instructor would give the correct digit or letter, and then the student would make a correction on their paper. The goal, in order to move on to the next area of difficulty, was for the student to have 95% mastery of the recorded signals correct across 3 consecutive runs. And there were several opportunities for runs within the hour of the study done. They found that there were common errors that contributed to generalization of the stimulus, and those were reversals, where, as you can see here, like F and L, they were just direct mirrors of each other, and students would often confuse those. Inversion, here K and R, the dashes and dots were just the opposites of each other. Excuse me. And then here, dotting errors were made when dot quantity and size was mistaken for another. So there would be several dots that would go with a digit or a letter, and those would be confused as well. Here is an example of a daily practice sheet that students completed. On the top, they worked left to right, and they wrote there as they heard the signal, they would write it down during that 3-second window. So sometimes students would leave it blank if they didn't know what it was. At the bottom is where the corrections were made as the instructor gave out the correct answer. And there that you wanted this second row to be clear as possible, showing a few errors. Here, this just shows the research of the time or hours of training required for 48 students to master the 36 Morse code signals using the entire method. And they saw where students were using the voiceover method was more effective than what was previously done, where students were just repeating back the dot and dash signal after it was presented to them. Keller continued to do several research studies in collaboration with others to try to perfect and overcome the generalization of stimulus of the sounds or signals, that were often mistaken. And so here they used phonetic equivalents. So if the code or signal had the then they would pair a word with the same phonetic equivalent. So round had two symbols that resembled the signal given. And here you can see where Skinner had started this research, and then Wertheimer and then Keller worked on this word list here. He continued on with that research for several years in trying to help get to perfect this method to make it more effective for students. Next, Keller worked on the Personalized System of Instruction, PSI, or known as the Keller Plan. This instruction was self-paced, so the students could work at their speed that they needed in order to learn. It was individualized, so a lot of it depended on the student. I mean, a lot of things were done by themselves. They were tested on their own, and when they came to class, it was mostly just like a study hall that they could come, and then they had the proctor instructor there that they could ask questions. It provided students with instant feedback, and it also provided feedback for the instruction based on student performance for the teacher. As I mentioned before, Keller particularly didn't like school, and he didn't like the lecture style of school, where students were just sitting and the teacher was just talking and talking. So how this was designed is there would be an instructor, an assistant, and a proctor. And the proctor was the one that mostly saw the students. It was an undergraduate student, had done well in the class prior, and so they would, and then they would go and give the test and help the students as needed. It also helped the students talk to someone who was relatable to them and what they were going through. And then students were provided course material, except for the textbook, and they must complete a certain level of mastery before they could work on the next unit, as we have seen in some on-glide classes before. Classes were all working towards the final exam, which is given on the same date, so everyone in the course was working towards that one goal. There were 4 testing opportunities weekly, and this was for students who could maybe work at a quicker pace. They could take more exams and move on to another unit, whereas other students may needed makeup sessions for missed tests that they had taken prior, or if they were sick, they had opportunities to take additional tests. Again, students worked at their own pace. There was optional class meetings. Typically, it was a study hall environment. And students, when they took the test, if they didn't reach the level of mastery that was set, they could go back and review the material and take the test again at a later date whenever it was offered. Also, when they missed a test, they could take their missed answers and go to the test proctor and defend their answers. So there helped provide feedback for both the student and the teacher. Some benefits: the students reported working harder to learn the material on their own to meet the mastery requirements, and students reported enjoying the PSI learning style and learning the content material, and overall they liked the setup of the course. Students like the instant feedback on their progress, and then the proctor, and they like the proctor to have someone to talk to about the course. Teachers reported enjoying the one-on-one relationship with students, and also the teachers liked getting the feedback of if there was more difficult content that the students struggled with, looking at student progress, and then understanding of test items if there needed to be more clarity in questions or something reworded. Keller had some comments on the PSI in an interview that I found on YouTube. And the interview, we'll just watch a couple of minutes of it, is it might be a little bit difficult to hear, and the video does not exactly correspond with the when he's talking, but you should be able to hear the whole audio. It doesn't break up. So we'll take this.
Who have the good of their pupils at heart. We've had great success with them. They have done what they could. That is not always what they want to do. They have done what they could, and they've improved their teaching. But we have not been accepted by the educational establishment. No, I think not. Maybe here more than in the States. Here I see development to look better. But I think in the States we have not been accepted. Yet nowhere do I see any drastic change. And I say it like this. If you have a handbag, or if you have a box in which to carry things, you have some things that you always carry in that box, and the box is so shaped inside to fit these things. So that you put this in that place, and this in that place, and so on. Now, if you get something new to put in the box, you have to change the nature of the box. And that's the hardest thing to do, because around the actual educational picture, there's a supporting picture. There is the involvement of administrators who have learned to do certain things because of the nature of what's in the box. It's a strange kind of situation we have. The institution gets so elaborate and so complex that you cannot do much with it. You cannot get inside of it without losing shape. You can't put your finding into the box without changing.
Okay, and there we see kind of Skinner's view on PSI and the acceptance. There was a lot of criticism in regards to the method of PSI, and it just, I think, was an overwhelming amount of change that at that time was difficult, and still to this day I think is relevant. Fred Keller passed away at the age of 97 on February 19th, 1996 due to cancer. Some questions that would have been asked is, how did you become a researcher or clinician? What is your primary area of interest or research? Has your area changed over time, and if so, how? What are important things I should know about working as about your work as beginning behavior analyst? In your interview, I was talking about his interview, the video that we just watched, that he felt like there was a hard acceptance of PSI, and I wondered if he still felt that way, if his opinion had changed in education, or does he still feel like there needs to be educational reform, and are we taking the steps in the right direction, and what needs to be done further? The impact of Keller's research: he developed useful teaching methods for introductory courses at Columbia University, which set a foundation for them as being well known in the field of behavior analysis, and also in the PSI method for individualized self-paced instruction. His work in reinforcement validated other researchers, such as Skinner's research on pigeons, whereas Keller used rats. His method of reinforcement in code reception with the voiceover method helped improve the instruction in that area for Morse code in the military. His research findings are foundational principles that we continue to use and build upon in the field of behavior analysis, and he really was one of those that helped push this field. And also the PSI method influenced individuals to design schools using behavior analysis. And here we can see where Keller was visiting one of the schools that was named after him, the Fred S. Keller School in Yonkers, New York. And here he is visiting that 2 years right before he passed away. Here are the references that I used in order to make this video, and I thank you for watching.